Assalamu alaikum. My name is Professor Dr. Rizwan Jamil Qureshi. Welcome to the world of advanced object-oriented software engineering. And we are in lecture number 5, main methods of object-oriented development. Instance, constructor, overloading, overriding, abstract are the main methods of object-oriented development. Let's begin with instance. What is instance method? As I already discussed in my previous lectures, that object has two phases. We have logical phase and we have physical phase. Logical phase, when you declare data and methods inside a class, that's the logical phase of an object. And when in the main method, you create object, like for example, the class name, compute space obj1 is equal to new compute. So obj1, now that's the physical phase of an object. Now you can call data and methods and you can perform actions and reactions. So obj1.set, obj1.show, obj1.execute. So instance is the physical phase of an object, and we can create as many instances as is required by the application or by the customer. Second method that's also very important, its name is constructor method. Constructor is like physical constructor. You have constructor to build some bridge or building. So the constructor method has the same name as the class name and the program name in some cases. Constructor is initialized by itself as program is executed by default. Third property of constructor, that it doesn't have return type. So these are the three unique properties of constructor method. Same name as the class name or the program name. Also, in case of Java or C++ or C#. Then you have overloading. You have method overloading or function overloading. What is the meaning of overloading? When two or more methods or functions having the same name but different parameters or different data types, like compute, int num1, int num2. Compute, second method, overloaded method, compute float num1, float num2. They will be treated differently because data types are different. In one compute, I have int, and another compute, I have float. Or compute int num1, int num2, int num3. Now that compute will be treated differently because it has three parameters. Overriding is the next method. Overriding means we override superclass or parent class features in the child classes. So inheritance is implemented through overriding. Like the humans, we inherit features of our forefathers up to 7 generations from the mother side and from the father side. Similarly, in object-oriented programming, you override features of parent class or superclass. You can use extends to override the data and the methods of the parent classes or the superclass. So inheritance is implemented through overriding. Abstract. When I discussed abstract class That time I also discussed abstract method. Abstract method cannot have body. Its body is declared in the concrete class and the concrete method. We have to use keyword abstract. Like when we use static method, we have to use keyword static. So abstract method is always declared inside the abstract class to hide the implementation details from the user. So abstraction is implemented through abstract classes and abstract methods. These are the main methods of object-oriented development. What is a component? When we talk about advanced object programming, component-based development is very important. So what's a component? What comes to your mind when you talk about a component? Each reusable binary piece of code is called a component. How many types of code we have? We have source code and we have object code. Object code is also called executable code, or it's also called binary code. There is another type which is intermediate code, like the case of Java or the .NET. When Java code is compiled, source code is compiled through a compiler. Compiler will translate the source code into an intermediate code. It's not high-level language code. It's not machine code. It's in between, neither male nor female. Then each operating system has JVM. What is JVM? Java Virtual Machine. When this intermediate code, which is called bytecode in Java, and in .NET, it is called MSIL, Microsoft Intermediate Language. When this intermediate code reached to JVM of an operating system like Windows or Linux or Unix, it is translated into machine code of that operating system that makes Java platform independent or portable. What is JVM? Is it compiler or interpreter or what? JVM is an interpreter. And then it has JIT. What is JIT? Just in-time compiler. So the code which is repeatedly executed, the portion of the code or part of the code or the component of the code, then we use JIT to execute, to increase the execution speed of the application. Here we are talking about binary. So we have source code and we have object code, which is also called binary code or executable code. Component is reusable binary piece of code. We can reuse it again and again. And you cannot change the functionality until you recompile that code, because it's executable code. It's not source code. So when you have executable code, you can reuse it and it's a component. Then when we talk about component, we can also say a component is like class. You can create as many instances, occurrences of the object as required by the application or the customer. There is another definition for the component. A component is like a pattern. So what's a pattern? Pattern is a structure or template that is designed to provide solution of a specific problem. And how many types of patterns we have in software engineering? That is the next question. We have architectural pattern, design pattern, and idiom pattern. Architectural patterns are used to design the architecture of the system or application, like data flow diagrams, UML diagramming, ERD diagramming. So they are examples of architectural pattern, or we have middle tier architecture, client server architecture, Corba, RMI, and then you have design pattern. Design patterns are also known as GOF patterns. GOF stands for Gang of Four. So there were four friends. They make a gang of four, and then they introduce patterns. There are 23 design patterns, and they are divided into three types. We have creational, structural, and behavioral. If we talk about creational, there are several examples like Singleton Factory. Singleton pattern is used in specific case when you want to create single instance of a class, like the case of print spooling, log on function, ATM, databases. Factory, when you want to create factory of objects like command button, command 1, command 2, command 3, text box 1, text box 2, text box 3, label box 1, label box 2, label box 3, form 1, form 2, form 3, project 1, project 2, project 3, doc 1, doc 2, doc 3, Excel 1, sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3. That's an example of factory pattern. We also have abstract factory, prototype, builder. They are also examples of creational. The structural, that is used to design the structure of system, like we have adapter, we have legacy system, and we have new systems. So adapter concept is taken to adapt. For example, you want to adapt 110 voltage to 220 or vice versa, you need an adapter. Or you have laptop or any electronic with switch of 2-pin, then you need a plug of an adapter of 3-pin. If the plate is of 3-pin or it's 2-pin, you have to use adapter. Same the case, we have legacy applications in Kabul, in Pascal, in Fortran, the old applications developed in 1970s, 80s. Old systems are called legacy systems. Then you need adapter to communicate the old system with the new systems in .NET, in PHP, in Perl, Python. So we need an adapter to communicate between the legacy system and the new system. Then we have memento. Pattern is also example of structural. When you want to undo or redo any operation or function, then you use memento pattern. For example, Control Z, or you can see arrow function in Excel or in PowerPoint and Microsoft Word, or you can redo. There is another arrow. So that's example of structural pattern. Then you have behavioral patterns, that how the application will behave. We have observer. Observer pattern is implemented in Excel or in MVC, model view controller, that is used to separate the application logic from business logic. You use observer pattern. And in Excel, you have data and you generate a table or bar chart, pie chart. If you change the data, the bar chart or pie chart will automatically change. So Excel is using observer pattern. And same is the case of MVC. If customer will change the data, automatically the controller will take that event and will check the model to perform an action based on the action of the user or event of the user. This is an example of behavioral patterns. The third type of pattern is idiom pattern. Idiom is used for algorithm designing, pseudocode, flowchart, decision table, decision tree. They all are or NS diagram, Nash-Schusterman diagram. These are the examples of idiom patterns. So component is like a pattern that forces the developers to use predefined procedures and meet the specifications to plug it into new components. For example, you have component in .NET. You have to follow the specifications and you have to follow the predefined procedures that is defined by the vendor. Normally, we have procedures in event-driven programming like Visual Basic that has click event, sub procedure, function procedure, or vendor-defined procedures, or Microsoft-defined procedures are there. So click event, where to perform an action, to perform an event or trigger an event or fire an event. Like when you write something on the Google, Google waits for the user to perform an action. So as user will type with something, the browser will respond. So internet programming languages use event-driven procedures. So click event is there. And you have sub procedure and function procedure. Sub procedure does not return value, whereas function procedure returns a value. And both are called in the click event. And then you have Microsoft defined procedures in Visual Basic. Like for example, when you click on the form, you can see property window, and you can click on the command button, you will see the property window, text box, you will see the property window, and you want to insert a picture or an image on the form. There is a property of the form to plug picture inside the form. So that's Microsoft defined procedures. Once you have a component in Microsoft tool, you cannot copy Microsoft defined procedure or Microsoft defined component inside the NetBeans or Cake PHP, Zen PHP, Ruby on Rails. Same case of NetBeans, you cannot copy NetBeans component and control and paste it in .NET because Microsoft has its own specifications. .NET NetBeans has its own specifications. That's enough for today. Any question? Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair. May Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum.